What if I told you one of the most OP abilities in Naruto are actually not that rare? Well, it is, but there's almost a dozen Susanoo users in the show, and I'm about to show you each one. Now, of course, I've got to start with the man that all dojutsu were born from, Hagoromo Otsutsuki. Hagoromo Susanoo was simply built different in every possible way. During the battle where he and his brother fought their mom Kaguya, he awakened his Mangekyo Sharingan and almost instantly learned and mastered his Susanoo. It's the only Susanoo that was in its perfected form right off the bat, and it was massive enough to match the size of a 10-tailed beast itself. Unfortunately, its only real appearance was in one of Shippuden's filler episodes, and even then it was so brief that we don't get to see it in action. In the short time we see it, all you can really tell is the giant scale of the Titan, the fact that it wields a chakra sword, and it's an almost holy looking light blue in color. Considering how incredibly powerful the Susanoo of his descendants get though, it's safe to say this was the strongest chakra construct in shinobi history. With no incomplete form to speak of, it was as close as you can get to an ultimate defense, nothing being able to break through its body, and that actually nullifies the only built-in weakness of the perfect Susanoo, which is that the user can be dragged out of the construct if someone gets inside the head. Between that, the sheer size of it, and the amount of chakra Hagoromo held as the first human chakra user, this was the ultimate Susanoo. In fact, the only other Susanoo to come close for many centuries after would be his own son, Indra's. Unlike Hagoromo's, Indra's Susanoo wasn't in the perfected form right off the bat, and it wasn't nearly as holy looking either. In fact, it's the opposite, cloaked in a dark, evil purple aura. Which is fitting, because in the anime, he gains his Mangekyo and unlocks Susanoo by killing his two best friends. Now, despite starting with an incomplete Susanoo, he developed the Chakra Titan really fast, ending up with what he named Complete Body Susanoo. Unfortunately, much like his father, Indra's Susanoo doesn't get a whole lot of screen time outside of his generational battle with Asura, his brother. Speaking of generational battles, the most powerful Susanoo's after his own actually belong to Indra's reincarnations and descendants, and of these, the first truly noticeable one was Madara Uchiha, the final supervillain of the whole series. Well, until the alien stuff came in and blew that up, but still. Anyways, Madara Susanoo is where things really get fun, because it's the first unique one we see in the series. Before we even get to its abilities, and there's some really sick ones to go over, let's just talk about its appearance. Now, unlike Hagoromo's default perfect Susanoo, every other user built theirs with layers upon layers of evolution. You've got the first stage skeleton, the second stage where some structures added on top of that, the third stage where it takes a full-on humanoid appearance, and then the armored stage before it becomes perfected. And Madara is actually the first ever true human to master all of those stages, but his Susanoo's every bit as twisted as he is. In its humanoid form, it's actually made of two separate bodies that are fused together at the spine and has 4 arms as a result, each of which can wield chakra swords. Those arms are still there once he reaches the perfect Susanoo stage, they're just not as obvious because they turn into his wings. And now that we're done with its appearance, it's time to talk about this Susanoo's abilities. To start off, you've got all the basic stuff like kaiju level stats, perfect defense, massive size, and more. With just a single strike of his chakra blades, Madara Susanoo could cleanly slice through a whole mountain range in one go. There's your proof, folks. Size does matter. Those swords come with their own built-in fire starters too, because swinging them leaves behind blue chakra flames that can explode and cause immense shockwaves. Additionally, Madara Susanoo can also create Yasaka Magatama to use as a long-range attack, basically working like huge explosive shuriken made of chakra. You'd think that's a lot, but there's still 2 more insane things Madara Susanoo is capable of. First off, cloning. See, unlike any other form of clones, wood clones are perfect copies of the original who can do everything the original can, which means that when Madara uses his implanted Hashirama cells to create wood clones, every single one of them can activate Susanoo. This is the power that completely overwhelmed the 5 Kage alliance, showing just how far above everyone else he was. On top of all of that, Madara Susanoo is able to go a step further when he takes control of Kurama by forming around the tailed beast instead of Madara himself. In this combined form, known as Majestic Attire Susanoo, everything about it is dialed up to 11. It loses the more refined techniques like the Yasaka Magatama and Madara's more controlled combat, but it makes up for it in raw destructive power. Kurama's strength combined with 2 extra limbs, bladed weapons in each hand, and unbreakable defense, and anything Madara himself does on top of all that, as a reincarnation of Indra, Madara Susanoo more than lives up to its lineage and then some. And yet, for all his power, Madara and his Susanoo still don't embody Indra's version as perfectly as Sasuke Uchiha, Indra's final and most powerful reincarnation. If Madara Susanoo has a whole page of abilities, Sasuke's has a whole damn book. Between his peak combat IQ, his wide range of abilities, and being gifted Indra's actual chakra, Sasuke Susanoo blows every other Uchiha's out of the water. Well, except Itachi's, but only because of hacks. We'll get to that later. As the second main character of the series, Sasuke gets enough screen time for us to see every stage of his Susanoo's evolution in full detail. When he first awakened it after learning the truth about Itachi, it was nothing more than a scrawny skeleton with devil horns and evil-looking purple chakra. And I'm not making that up either. Karin specifically mentions that Sasuke's chakra at this point was darker than ever because of his mental state, and that carries over to his Susanoo. During his first time using it at the 5 Kage summit, he was able to manifest specific parts of the Susanoo, like the ribcage and arms at will. At this point though, he was both weak and inexperienced enough that the 4th Raikage and 5th Mizukage were able to damage it. It was only later during the fight with Danzo that it advanced to the humanoid form, and then to the armored stage while facing Team 7 after Danzo's death. At this point, it was still influenced by the hate and despair in his heart, but that changed not long after. Once Sasuke accepted Itachi's eyes and gained the Eternal Mangekyo, his armored Susanoo reverted from its evil look as he slowly started coming to terms with everything he'd learned. By the time he joined Team 7 in the war effort, his Susanoo was finally free of its dark side and worked in perfect sync with his friends. At the same time, it went through its final evolution, reaching the complete body perfect form. In this form, Sasuke's Susanoo is identical to Indra's, as powerful as Madara's, and as big as Kurama himself. At this point, Sasuke's Susanoo is the strongest it's ever been, and has access to a massive arsenal of abilities. Thanks to his mastery of Chidori and the several variations that he created, his Susanoo is able to use those as well, weaving lightning jutsu into its regular attacks with ease. But that's only half of it, because unlike any other Mangekyo user, Sasuke Susanoo uses the black flames of Amaterasu as a weapon instead of an attack. See, while every sage of Sasuke Susanoo has had some kind of blade, its main weapon is actually the bow strapped to its left wrist, doubling up as a shield when needed. He drops it in favor of a pair of katana in his perfect Susanoo, but in every other form, he uses Amaterasu's flames to coat the arrows he fires and makes them infinitely more dangerous. Add some lightning projectiles into the mix every now and then, and this Susanoo has the most dangerous ranged attacks on any battlefield. All of that's even crazier when you take into consideration that Sasuke can use the Majestic Attire Susanoo just like Madara, cloaking Kurama with his avatar to combine their powers. Between the unquestionable flames of Amaterasu, the raw destructive power of the strongest tailed beast, and the unending support of his best friend, Sasuke Susanoo tears through the enemy forces like wet tissue in this fusion. After that, you've got the properties that added into Susanoo once he gets Hagoromo's chakra. With one of his eyes advancing into a Rinnegan, Sasuke Susanoo blocks not only all physical attacks, but even the light of the infinite Tsukuyomi. This power alone allows him to shield Team 7 from being trapped in the Genjutsu, and without his Susanoo, it would have all ended right then and there. And then, after everything's already over, he goes and whips out a whole new form. Completely unique to Sasuke Susanoo, it's a form that comes out when he sucks out chakra from all of the tailed beasts and feeds it into his super evolved Susanoo, the Indra Susanoo. In this form, Sasuke Susanoo becomes a combination of two constructs. On the outside, his perfect Susanoo's armor, amping his stats and protecting him from all attacks, and on the inside, an avatar of pure chakra and lightning. In this form, Sasuke Susanoo can create and release his swords at will instead of having them be a part of the Susanoo armor, allowing him to catch enemies off guard. And that's good for him, because he tends to toss those things as projectiles freely, causing them to explode in massive lightning pillars on impact. With the chakra of all 9 tailed beasts as fuel on top of his own power, Sasuke's clashed with Naruto using this Susanoo was so destructive that it was a danger to the planet itself. So without a doubt, Sasuke's Susanoo overall is both the most powerful and the most versatile of all by the time he fully grows into it, and that's no exaggeration. But none of that growth would have been possible if not for the man who sacrificed everything for him, and maybe the only one whose Susanoo is just as broken, Itachi Uchiha, Sasuke's older brother. Honestly, where do you even begin with a Susanoo that's built to be the most powerful plot device in the world? The sword that can erase anyone from existence, the mirror that can't be hit, or the giant Yasaka bead-shaped shuriken? To start, remember what I said earlier about Itachi Susanoo being best described as total hacks? Well, in the main series, he only ever reaches the armored stage, but the weapons it wields still make it the Susanoo with the single highest potential. During his final battle with Sasuke, Itachi revealed that his Susanoo possesses both the legendary artifacts, the Sword of Totsuka and the Yata Mirror. With the first, he can seal anyone cut by it into the eternal genjutsu inside its sheath. With the second, he can nullify any attack thrown his way because the mirror changes its nature to reflect whatever comes its way. During the battle, Black Zetsu was watching everything from a distance, and even he said that both those things together made Itachi Susanoo invincible. Mind you, this is the sentient will of Kage Otsutsuki, and he believed that about Itachi Susanoo. That alone says more than all my yapping could. The only reason Itachi died was because of his blood disease, and because the plot demanded it. If he was allowed to grow, develop, and train himself in the right environment, nothing could have been this Susanoo. Matter of fact, Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 actually gives us a peek at what that would have looked like, and it is by far the coolest perfect Susanoo in the whole series. The only Susanoo whose potential was wasted more than Itachi's was actually his best friend's, the infinitely selfless Shisui Uchiha. Now, unfortunately, Shisui's Susanoo isn't actually shown in any canon material at all. While the others all show up even if only briefly, this Susanoo's sole representation is in 2 of the Ultimate Ninja Storm games, Revolution and 4, and if you've played those games, you know exactly how busted this thing is. In the former, it's just a humanoid stage of his Susanoo, but it's one of the most overpowered awakenings in the game. Considering Shisui was known as the greatest prodigy of the Uchiha in years, that comes as no surprise. Even just that humanoid Susanoo had a drill he could coat in fire, a long-range attack that bombards enemies faster than they can react, and more aura than half the roster. And then in Ninja Storm 4, they take it a step further and shows us what it could have become if Shisui had survived. Safe to say, never seeing this in the main series might just be the biggest tragedy in Naruto. While we're on the topic of Susanoos that only appear in games though, I'd like to bring up an honorable mention before we move to our final entry, Mers. If you don't know who that is, don't worry, neither did I until I made this video. Much like Shisui's Susanoo, this whole character isn't exactly canon, but he does have a really sick Susanoo. To be clear though, that Susanoo is the only cool thing about this guy. Other than that, he's a bum, a glazer, and completely irrelevant. His backstory is literally just that he was one of Pain's meat riders, got blinded in the Ame War, and doesn't like how peaceful things are now, so he wants the world to go back to war. To that end, he built his own knockoff Akatsuki, has the mad scientist build mechanical eye sockets for himself, and then makes him create artificial Sharingan to implant in them. Yes, artificial Sharingan that somehow have the power of real ones. You have every right to enjoy this game, but the writing is unbelievably bad. Anyways, with that little rant out of the way, let's take a look at his actual Susanoo. Since his Sharingan are artificial, Mers' Susanoo doesn't look exactly like a normal perfect Susanoo, but where its body is stuck in the skeletal form, it makes up for it by having the fires of Amaterasu in its flesh. Yes, that does go insanely hard, almost redeems his character. Of course, Mers is ultimately taken down, but he's not the first non-Uchiha with a banging Susanoo. In fact, the first man to achieve that is Kakashi Hatake, the copycat ninja. Now, technically speaking, this Susanoo is actually Obito Uchiha since it's his Sharingan, but Obito unfortunately never got to use it, and with him giving Kakashi his chakra, the Susanoo he creates is heavily influenced by Kakashi himself. If you need proof, just look at the scar over his Susanoo's eye, perfectly mirroring Kakashi's own. Interestingly enough, despite never being able to use it before, when both Obito's Sharingan were reunited in Kakashi's skull, he was able to call out his Susanoo in the complete body perfect form right off the bat. Other than Hagoromo, this is the only Susanoo that's ever been shown to spawn at max level, though it's for much more technical reasons than his. Now as for the Susanoo's power, what makes it truly dangerous is the weaponry it uses. Much like Itachi's, with this Susanoo, Kakashi is able to create massive Mangekyo-shaped shuriken that have the power of Kamui carved into them. What does that mean? Well, anything that these shuriken even touch is instantly warped to the Kamui dimension. No time delay, no concentration requirement, and no fuss. All Kakashi had to do is toss one of these bad boys at a target and bam, they're on his turf. Add to that the fact that he can use all of Obito's Mangekyo abilities, like phasing through enemy attacks, and this Susanoo's even stupider than Itachi's. Oh, and did I mention it can fly? Yep, even though every perfect Susanoo has wings, Kakashi's is the only one other than Sasuke's that can use them to fly. Combine that with his incredible speed, his intangibility, and the Kamui Shuriken, and you've got a Susanoo that simply cannot be hit and doesn't need to get anywhere near you to launch its own attacks. True Uchiha or not, Kakashi's experience as a shinobi allows him to draw out every last bit of this Susanoo's potential, and Team 7 couldn't have beaten Kage without his support. If you're curious on how this Susanoo would do up against Gojo from JJK, check out this video here.